And now it's time for us to discuss more of these headlines and simple keywords. And Adam joining us via Zoom. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Lena. Are you okay?
Sure. Let's go with okay. Can you hear me? This is me.
I can.
Trying my best this morning. Yeah,
I can, but I'm a bit worried about you, though. Hope you're hanging in there.
Aren't you glad we're doing this via Zoom?
Yeah.
All right. The cold, it's no joke this season. So everyone be careful. Mask up. It's also really frigid this morning, so be careful out there, folks.
Yeah.
All right. Talk more, Adam. I'll talk less.
Yeah, certainly. I'll certainly help you out.
All right. Let's jump into some of our major headlines this morning. We're going to try to clarify it in keywords. This is our first pick of the day.
Senior officials meeting.
So senior officials of the government, the presidential office, and the People Power Party have met at the National Assembly to discuss issues relating to people's livelihoods. We also have quickly a Lunar New Year holiday coming up too. It's about stabilizing prices after all. What came out of this meeting specifically?
Right, so primarily the first thing that came out was that the electricity rate increase for 3.65 million vulnerable households will actually be postponed once more. Now, in addition, 400,000 small business owners and self-employed people will receive a reduction of up to 1.5 million won in interest on money borrowed from secondary or non-banking financial institutions starting next month. In addition, a record 39 trillion won will be given in new funds to support holiday liquidity for small business owners and SMEs. Authorities will also check whether subcontract payments and wages are actually paid on time. The monthly purchase limit for Onnuri gift certificates that support traditional markets and neighborhood shopping districts will be increased by 500,000 won. In the case of paper gift certificates, the current value will increase from 1 million won to 1.5 million won. And during the Lunar New Year holiday period, which is February 9th to the 12th, highway toll fees, as usual, will be free. KTX and SRT tickets for those traveling to their hometowns will be discounted by up to 30%, but it is best to book in advance because they do tend to sell out quickly. For the holiday, the government plans to intensively supply 16 key items commonly used for ancestral rites, whether it be apples or pears and those type of items. The government discount support rates will be raised from 20% from 20% to 30%. The number of traditional markets participating in the government discount program will be expanded as well to 700 for agricultural and livestock products and 1,000 for seafood products. And meanwhile, the People Power Party during the meeting also urged the government to develop concrete measures to reduce the tuition burden for college students as well.
All right, so certainly trying to cover all bases, especially for the vulnerable groups. I only chuckled because you said 16 key items and you've only listed 2 fruits. there's meat, rice, there's produce.
I don't want to list all 16.
All right, let's move on to our second keyword of the day.
IRBM launch.
North Korea says it has successfully test-fired a solid-fuel intermediate-range ballistic missile, sparking condemnation from South Korea, the U.S., and Japan. It is North's first provocation of the year, but it's expected to continue, frankly, leading up to the general elections especially. What's the latest?
Yeah, so the first one of the year, but of course more are expected to come throughout the rest of the year and probably more frequently as well. Now, South Korea's military said yesterday's missile launched from an area of Pyongyang flew about 1,000 kilometers. Seoul said it was analyzing the missile in coordination with the United States and Japan. Military authorities are focusing on the possibility that this launch was a test of a new solid fuel IRBM, which the North Koreans claim it to be. That came after North Korea's announcement of successful engine tests last November as well. Now, North Korea, for its part, said the launch was part of regular activities to develop powerful weapon systems. State media said the missile was carrying a hypersonic warhead in a bid to check the warhead's glide, flight control and stability. as well as the missile's solid fuel engine reliability. The KCNA added that the launch did not give any impact on the safety of neighboring countries and was carried out regardless of the regional security situation. Whether that was to quell the concerns of neighboring countries remains to be seen, but it is basically justifying its reasoning for the test fire. It also comes 27 days actually after the North's ICBM launch. So in terms of severity, the provocation is about a tier less than that of an intercontinental ballistic missile, but it is a provocation nonetheless. Now, South Korea, the US, and Japan, in relation to that, condemned the test firing. The JCS said it shared data on the missile with US and Japanese authorities, and it added that it will maintain capabilities and readiness to overwhelmingly respond to any provocation, doubling down on its hardline rhetoric against the North. Now, experts predict that the regime may continue additional tests of this new IRBM, particularly considering not just the April general elections here in Korea, but also the US presidential election that's scheduled for November as well.
All right. With that, we move on to our third keyword of the day.
Energy import risk.
So the Trade Ministry has held an emergency meeting to inspect shipping operations for crude oil and LNG. This is amid attacks from Yemen's Houthi rebels in the Red Sea. If there would be any supply disruptions, what did they discuss?
Yeah, so this is a particular concern, especially in the Western world as well, because they did target commercial ships in particular. So, of course, that will directly affect oil prices around the world. Now, the meeting involved officials from the Korea National Oil Corporation, Korea Gas Corporation, as well as the four major Korean oil refineries. There was a meeting between the public and private sector. The ministry reported there have been, so far, no setbacks on crude oil and gas imports. It added that oil tankers and transport ships sailing or loading near the Middle East are operating normally as of now. However, it did acknowledge that depending on the progression of the situation, a crisis in energy supply cannot be ruled out. In preparation for any potential supply emergency, the ministry checked the status of national oil and gas reserves and reviewed emergency response procedures. Additionally, it emphasized the importance of industry efforts as well to prevent an increased burden on the public due to potential rises in oil prices. Now, following the recent events, international oil prices showed a slight increase. The global community is closely monitoring the responses of major countries such as the US and Iran to the Middle East situation. These responses will likely influence whether the current upward trend in oil prices will persist. So it's still relatively ongoing and new at the moment. We'll have to see what the ripple effects, if any, are for Korea. But at the moment, things seem to be okay. But of course, they are still vigilant.
All right, let's move on to our fourth keyword of the day.
Bitcoin ETF debate.
So financial authorities in Korea have reiterated their stance against Bitcoin ETFs. This is after, of course, the U.S. approved such ETFs for the country. It creates kind of confusion for especially local investors. What's the latest?
Yeah, so many investors in Korea, especially investors in cryptocurrency, were a bit hopeful that maybe such ways could be opened in Korea for Bitcoin ETFs, but that isn't really the case so far. Anyway, they say Korea decided not to further review the need for domestic brokerage of Bitcoin spot ETFs listed abroad or the launch of domestic Bitcoin spot ETFs. An official at the Financial Services Commission stated that authorities have rather decided to observe the situation instead. Now, the official added that the decision is in line with the previous government's stance, focusing on specific issues raised by the industry rather than considering brokerage or launch of such ETFs. Now, the FSC noted that the US has a different legal system from Korea, making it difficult to directly apply the US case domestically. The FSC said this issue is closely related to the stability of the financial market, the soundness of financial institutions, and investor protection. It previously noted that the implementing of Bitcoin ETFs could potentially violate the Capital Markets Act as well. Now, it did hint at the possibility of reviewing Bitcoin ETFs before, but they seem to have concluded that they weren't really viable for the local markets. The presidential office, however, is mulling whether to adopt or urge the financial authorities to adopt Bitcoin ETFs, apparently concerned about investor backlash, especially with the elections coming up. Consequently, they have instructed the FSC to conduct a comprehensive review without preconceived conclusions. Whether that will influence the FSC remains to be seen. But they have it. So there is a little bit of tension there between the president, the top office wanting to maybe have the FSC review it at least.
Okay.
The FSC is saying that there's, a lot of legal repercussions and it doesn't really apply to Korea as it applies to the US. So we'll have to see if there are any changes. But at the moment, no Bitcoin ETFs for Korea for now, anyway.
All right, let's move on to our final keyword of the day.
Davos Forum.
So the annual meeting of the World Economic Forum will take place at Davos, Switzerland this week with a focus on rebuilding trust amid sluggish global growth. Do we throw around that word too lightly, trust? All right, what can we expect?
Well, ironically, the theme of this year is rebuilding trust, but there's a lot of absentees when it comes to the attendance for these, including a lot of heads of state. They're sending other senior officials instead. So is that a trust issue? That is the question. Now, it kicks off for 5 days from Monday local time. The Davos Forum is an annual event, of course, where prominent politicians and business leaders and academics from various countries convene in Davos to discuss pressing global issues each January. And as I said, this year's theme is rebuilding trust. Now, amid ongoing geopolitical conflicts, including the war in Ukraine, the Israel-Hamas conflicts, coupled with accelerating climate change and global economic slowdown, rebuilding international trust is seen as an urgent necessity. Now, the focus of this year's forum will be on easing tensions that were exacerbated by the Ukraine war and the Gaza Strip conflict, as well as most recently the Houthi rebel attacks on these commercial ships in the Red Sea. Now, the messages from U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, the White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan are of particular interest. Eyes are on what they'll be saying. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is also expected to appeal for continued international support for his country. Eyes are also on statements regarding the situation on the Gaza Strip as well. There will be officials from Israel attending. Topics such as climate change response, AI's impact on the future. There's been a lot of focus on AI. This is CES as well. Normalization of trade blocs, global economic slowdown, and increasing income inequality will also be hotly debated at the Davos Forum. Now, unlike last year, top leaders from the US and China will not be attending. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, as I said, will be representing Joe Biden. The Chinese Premier Li Keqiang will also be giving a special speech in place of President Xi Jinping. Sorry, not Li Keqiang, Li Chang, sorry, is the Chinese president. I keep getting that mixed up. Now, the French President Emmanuel Macron is actually one of the few confirmed G7 leaders attending. So with the absence of all the other kind of G7 or major economy and nation leaders, it begs the question, how effective will this year's Davos Forum be? Now, for Korea as well, Yoon Suk-yeol will not be attending. Instead, it'll be the Prime Minister, Han Duck-soo. Major South Korean business figures are also set to attend, but the heads of the 4 major Korean conglomerates are expected not to participate. So, your Samsung and LGs will not be attending this year's forum. So, yes, if they do discuss anything, does it really have any significance when all the top players aren't there to agree on it?
The framework seems necessary, but I mean, it does reflect just the priority when it comes to many other moving parts. So we'll have to wait and see. Certainly, I'm just trying to wrap my head around the fact that we just finished CES. Davos is back. Brand new year.
Yeah, a lot of events kicking off to kick off the year. Yeah, certainly.
All right. Thank you very much, Adam, for today's coverage. We'll see you tomorrow.
You're very welcome. Hope you get better. See you tomorrow.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.